Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Stream of Consciousness with Dr. B. So, if this is your first time joining us, Stream of Consciousness is just a about 10-15 minute talk of things that are on my mind. And today, which is May 29th, 2025, the thing that's on my mind is the presidential pardons that we have been seeing over the past few days. So I've entitled today's little talk, Power and Pardon, Trump's latest presidential moves, right? So if you have been living under a rock and you have not heard, or I'll just say if you've been disconnected, what we've seen over the past few days have been a few presidential pardons that I think many of us were kind of taken off guard by. So, specifically, what has happened on yesterday, May 28th, he issued a lot of surprising pardons. Amongst them were Raymond Novak, who's a former state legislator who was convicted of embezzlement, Carlos Big Union Rivera, who was a controversial union leader convicted of bribery and corruption, the rapper Little Flame, who was known for his political activism and past weapons charge. Now, there was another one that kind of piqued my ear, which was Chris Chrisley and his wife. And so Chris Chrisley was a television star along with his wife and family, and they had this show where they toted their conservative views and whatnot. And I didn't really watch the show because it did not pique my interest, but it was on for a little bit. But ironically, prior to them doing the show, they had committed a lot of bank fraud. And the bank fraud was to help them live in a certain manner, which I think was highlighted on the show. So of the four people that I just named, a lot of this, or not a lot of it, all of them have charges basically of corruption, right? Which seems to be synonymous with the time that we are in right now. The key thing was that the pardons, rather than going through their normal channels, they went through late at night, and they were announced late at night without a specific briefing. So usually we'll have a briefing by the press secretary, and we'll know about these things, but that did not happen. It was released and announced late at night, which is after business hours typically. So of course that caught a lot of the White House staff off guard. Now, the thing with the presidential pardons, there is a lot of political and legal, what should we call it? There's a lot behind it, I'll say, when it comes to politics and legalities. So I'm going to read this. Presidential pardons are granted under Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The president can pardon offenses against the U.S. except in case of impeachment, right? Historically, this has been used by presidents at the end of their term, i.e. Obama, Bush, and Clinton all used presidential pardon power at the end of their term, and it's usually after a Department of Justice review. Of course, that review was bypassed by our current president, and these were kind of just sprung on us or announced, like I said, late at night. During the first administration, there were three main people that were pardoned, which was Michael Flynn, who was the former National Security Advisor, Roger Stone, who was a political advisor, and Paul Manafort, who was the former campaign manager. All of these, again, had issues of corruption, and they were pardoned by president during his first term. So there have been a lot of reactions, and ironically this time, so what I'll say, of course, the Democrats seem to all disagree, right? They are kind of outraged by this. The Republicans are pretty evenly split, where some of them are also kind of outraged and say that this should have gone through the proper channels. And then there are the others who believe that this is all okay. This is the president exercising his presidential authority. Some scholars say that pardons are usually valid, but ethically questionable, right? And so, one of the things that I heard about the other day or yesterday in listening, one person said, yeah, presidential pardon powers may be used for a person who may have done a crime and the punishment did not fit the crime. And, he may, or the president may use the powers of pardoning to release that person and kind of let them put that part behind them. The problem, I think, in this case is these people are indeed guilty. The time it seems that they have received, or the punishment, let me say, seem to fit the crime. The other thing is that people are worried, or people generally worry, that pardons can erode the public trust of the justice system. And so, meaning, a lot of people may say, well, if I commit a crime and I'm able to get pardoned, what's the purpose of the justice system? Right? It's like you go through the process of through the justice system, and no matter what they say, you can always be pardoned. That is the main issue with all of this, right? So it's really showing us again that our justice system has no power or authority, which has been a common theme that we've seen since the transition of the administration, where a lot of things have taken place and the judicial branch has put in an order and the order has been ignored. So let's say, like with the deportation of the deportation planes, there was an order requesting that those planes be grounded, that be stopped, and that has not stopped, right? In terms of the firing of employees in the federal government, there has been, or there was, a stay put on a lot of that, and that did not stop. It kind of went through. Thankfully, now a judge has ruled that that needs to be further looked into, and the people, the federal employees that are on admin leave and extended leaves, whatever, they are not to be released officially until the lawsuits for that have gone through. So until it has been legally determined what should happen, no more movement can happen in that point. The great thing is, for those who are on leaves, they are allowed to continue to keep their job until the lawsuits are done. The bigger picture of the whole thing is that this has great political implications. A lot of people may look at it and say, well, this is the president's way of shoring up his strength and shortly before the 2026 elections, particularly with the activists, the labor movements, and the younger voters, which I don't know if, well, I guess I could see younger voters kind of perhaps jumping on the bandwagon for that. But I think if we are smart, or think about this smartly, I'm not going to say if we're smart, if we think about it smartly, we all may face the justice system at some time or another in our lives. Either we have committed a crime or we are the plaintiff in a crime, right? And so, on either side of the fence, I feel like you would want the justice system to work and operate the way it's supposed to, so that you could possibly, especially if you're the plaintiff, you can get the justice that you are due. The reality is that all of us cannot and will not be pardoned, for things that may happen. So I think we have to think of it on that scale. The people who have been pardoned, you look at who they are, their connection, their level of wealth, their level of status, and then you can kind of see, well, maybe this is why they would have the affordability to be pardoned, whereas those who may not be as high in status or may not have as much money probably would not be. And if you think about many of the crimes that happen, you know, people just are not pardoned like on a daily basis. So this was really unprecedented. Um, the major concern with all of this is, again, it's undermining the legal accountability, and the pardon power is being used as political currency. You know, one of the questions that has been floating around is, do any of these people that he have pardoned, do they have any type of allyship with him, or are they just people at a particular status level? You know, I don't want to think of it like this, but I would venture to say that many of these people have a connection. They either have, they can either help him politically in some kind of way, or they have some type of information that could possibly be used against him, and which is why he then went ahead and pardoned these certain people. So my final thoughts, I would say, as a question to you all, presidential pardons are meant to offer mercy and grace to those who are due, right? But what happens when they become tools of political strategy? Do they protect justice, or do they protect privilege? And that is one of the things that we are seeing in this time, is that a lot of things are coming down to privilege. A lot of us do not have privilege. So therefore, when we look at it from that standpoint, if you are a person who believes that you do not have a certain level of privilege, would you be offered a pardon if something were to happen? I think a lot of times, like right now, I know a lot of people who are immigrants to this country, and then I think about them all the time, because I say, could there be a day when the streets are just, where they just swept up off the street? And we're seeing it now happen in a lot of different places, but I know we haven't really seen it in DC as far as I know. I think there was like information of one raid. I do know some people who have who are affiliated with schools and whatnot, and so they talk about the worry of ICE coming to their schools and picking up children and things like that. So I often think about, those who are even citizens here may be swept up into those kind of raids and processes of deportation, but not have the benefit of being at a certain level where they could be pardoned. Well, now I don't want to say pardoned at that point, but where they don't have the benefit of the doubt, to where someone would listen to what they're saying. Look at the gentleman who was from Maryland, who was legally here, who had already sought asylum, and they said he could not be deported to El Salvador. He could be deported anywhere else if he committed a crime. right? But they deported him to El Salvador and refused to get him back here or either move him somewhere else. And so that is, one of the things that I think about constantly is the fairness of a lot of what we're seeing. And that is just the end of it, that we are not seeing justice. We are not seeing things move in a fair way for a lot of people. So I think one of the things that I encourage you to think about is, what message do you think that these pardons send to the American people overall, right? Again, what message do you think that these pardons send to the American people overall? And with that, I want to conclude today's conversation. Thank you all for joining and listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment when you see the video. Definitely rate it. And, the next show, I will be back, of course, to talk about another interesting topic that is on my mind, which I already have on my mind, but I'm not going to release it just yet. I need to do a little more digging before I bring that out. But I want to thank you for joining Stream of Consciousness today. My name is Dr. Rashawn Broadnax, and I hope to see